Hello, second grade scientists, and welcome to another science lesson. This week we are looking at landforms. This picture I chose has all sorts of landforms all over it. Do any of them look familiar to you? I hope some of them do. Are there any you've never heard of before? There are a couple I've never really heard of either. What do you notice? What do you wonder? Pause for a moment and take a look at the picture. If there's someone at home you can turn and talk to, turn and talk. Today, we're going to talk about a few different kinds of landforms that we see on our planet. Not all of these that are labeled here, but some of them. So, what is a landform? A landform is a feature on the Earth's surface made of rock and soil. And today, we're going to learn about 8 different landforms. Let's start off with one you're probably familiar with: a mountain. What do you notice about the mountain? Well, it's very tall. This one's quite pointy on top. We call that jagged. It almost looks like there might be layers in the rock. It's much higher than the land around it, and this lake is so much lower than the top or peak of that mountain. So, what is a mountain? A mountain is an area of land that is much higher than the land surrounding it. It is taller than a hill. Speaking of hills, what is a hill? Well, what do you notice about this picture? It's similar to a mountain, but these hills don't seem so tall. Also, this mountain was so jagged. These hills are kind of nice and round. So, what's a good definition for hill? A hill is a rounded area of land. It is lower than a mountain, but higher than flat ground. So now we know a mountain and a hill. Let's keep going. Next up, we have a valley. What is a valley? What do we notice in this picture? I see some tall, maybe mountains on this side and on this side. And then down here, I see all these, I think they're trees, all this land spread out between, nice and wide. So a valley is the lowland between two mountains or hills. We have a mountain on this side, a mountain on this side, and all of this low land in between. That is called a valley. Another landform we have is a canyon. Now, a canyon kind of looks like a valley, and that's because it kind of is. But what's different about this wide valley versus this canyon? Well, the mountains on the side of this canyon are very, very steep. It's like a sheer cliff face. It's also not very wide. Look how much space there is between the mountains. Here, there's very little space. So a canyon is a deep, narrow valley with steep sides. It often has a stream or river flowing through it. And this is a picture of the Grand Canyon. And we see this is the Colorado River flowing through the Grand Canyon, which has these very steep sides. Excellent job. We have a few more landforms to look at. Next up, we have a plain. What do you notice about this landform here? I don't really see much of a landform, do you? I see grasses. I see some bushes. I see lots of clouds up in the sky. So what is a plain? Not a plane like an airplane, but a plain like the Great Plains here in the United States. A plain is a large, flat area of land without trees. It almost looks like there's trees in the distance, but I have a feeling they're more bushes like this one here. The middle of our country is covered in the Great Plains, flat land with no trees. Next up, we have a plateau. Have you heard of a plateau? What do you notice in this picture? This picture makes me think of a hill, right? Higher than some of the land around it, but it's different than a hill. How is it different than a hill? Well, if I remember, a hill is a rounded piece of land. My plateau isn't very rounded. It looks more flat. It's kind of like a mountain, although it doesn't seem super duper tall, just taller than the land around it. So a plateau is a large, flat area of land that is higher than the land around it. It's kind of like a flat hill. All right, we have a couple more landforms to look at. Next up, a peninsula. What do you notice in this picture? The land is so skinny. And look at all this pretty blue water around it. Does it go all the way around it? It doesn't look like it. And it shouldn't. A peninsula is a piece of land surrounded by water on 3 sides, or almost all sides. This piece of land is kind of funny shaped, but we can see land on this side, on this short side, and all along here. But it looks like the land is then connected. So what do you call land that is completely surrounded by water? I bet you know it. An island. That's right. A peninsula is surrounded by water on 3 sides, while an island is a piece of land completely surrounded by water. And this is a picture of Iguana Island. I picked it because I liked the name. That's off the coast of Central America. So we have 2 landforms that are defined by how they are surrounded by water. All right, second grade scientists, you're now going to do some work where you have to match landforms to their name and definition. You should have a worksheet that looks just like this. We have 6 landforms going down the side here. On the second page, you have the name of 6 different landforms and the definition of 6 different landforms. You're going to very carefully cut out each little card for the names and each little card for the definition, and then you're going to match the name and the definition to the best picture. You can go back in the video and take a look at the pictures we had with their definitions. You can work with someone who's at home with you. Do your best cutting, neatest gluing, and make your landforms look fantastic. Pause the video, and then when you're done, come back and you can double check your answers. But take the time to give it a go all on your own. You can do it, second grade scientists. All right, if you're back, that means you have completed your landform matching and you are ready to double check your answers. Now I'm going to just review the 6 that are on our worksheet, the 6 landforms that are on our worksheet, and I'm not going to necessarily do them in the right order. I just want to remind you of each landform, its name, and its definition. So first we talked about a mountain. And a mountain is an area of land that is much higher than the land surrounding it, and it's definitely taller than a hill. Look how tall that mountain is. Speaking of hills, we have a hill. And a hill is a rounded area of land. It is lower than a mountain, but still higher than the land around it. Then we talked about valleys, and a valley is the low land between 2 mountains or hills. Then we talked about a specific kind of valley. We talked about a canyon, which is a deep, narrow valley with steep sides. It often has a stream or river flowing through it, like the Grand Canyon. Then we talked about plains, not an airplane up in the sky, but plains, large, flat areas of land without any trees, like the middle of our country. And last but not least, a plateau. And maybe you haven't heard of a plateau before, but now you know. A plateau is a large, flat area of land that is higher than the land around it. Now, my second grade scientists, I want to leave you with a question to wonder about. How were these landforms made? What could have possibly caused this land of a valley to form this way? How did the plains become so flat? How did that plateau get risen up like that? Did there used to be more land that got weathered and eroded? When we talked about weathering and erosion, we looked at the Grand Canyon because it's an excellent example. That Colorado River spent millions of years weathering the rock, breaking it down into sediments, and then the current of the river eroded the sediments and deposited them elsewhere, so that we had this nice canyon, this deep, narrow valley with very steep sides on cliffs. So if you have some time, think about it. How was this mountain formed? How was it weathered? How was it eroded? What about the hills or the valleys? Just think about it. I bet you second grade scientists could come up with all sorts of ideas. Until next time, have a great day, second grade scientists.